Late night. Two Americans were being held in the Khazar prison in Tehran, Iran. The sounds outside were getting closer. Not a rescue team. Not the US government. A mob of Iranian revolutionaries, armed with rifles, charging toward the prison walls. Were they coming to save them, or to kill them? Out on the street below, a small team was waiting. Not special forces. Not the CIA. 7 Texan businessmen in civilian clothes, and a retired army colonel with the calcined bull. Their boss was pacing the floor of a hotel room in Istanbul. His name was Ross Perot. Billionaire, Texan, future US presidential candidate. He had spent his own money to do something the US government couldn't. In 1978, Iran was still under the rule of Shah Pahlavi. Perot's company, Electronic Data Systems, EDS, had landed a $20 million contract. Install a social security computer system for the Iranian government. He sent in 2 of his best men, Paul Chiapparone, president of EDS Iran, Bill Gaylord, his deputy, to Texas engineers, just trying to finish the job. The problem: Iran owed EDS $5 million in unpaid fees and wasn't paying. In December 1978, Perot pulled the plug and ordered his people out. He later said, within 12 hours of that decision, Iran started taking our people. No formal charges, no legal process. 2 Texas engineers were now sitting in a Tehran prison. Bail, $12,750,000. The news reached Dallas. Perot's first call was to the US government. The State Department's response left him cold. His second call went to Arthur Simons, calcined bull, retired Army colonel, 60 years old. In 1970, he led the raid on the Son Tay POW camp in North Vietnam, one of the most audacious special operations in US military history. Perot explained the situation. Simons was quiet for a few seconds. "I'll go." Simons handpicked volunteers from inside EDS. One criterion only: real combat experience, not training. The kind where you pull the trigger and watch someone fall. 7 Vietnam veterans stepped forward. They trained in secret at Perot's lakeside retreat near Dallas, rehearsing on a scale model of the Ministry of Justice prison in Tehran, running the entry and exit routes over and over. They were ready. Then the prisoners were moved, transferred to Kaiser Prison, built in 1790. Stone walls, heavy guard. Simons shook his head. 7 men can't take that place. We need a new plan. Then Perot did something that left everyone speechless. He flew to Tehran himself, disguised as an NBC cameraman, smuggled in on a charter jet that ferried news footage in and out of the country. Once in the city, he switched identities again. Food delivery man. $5 a day in bribes to the guards. Every day, he walked into the visitation room and sat face to face with his 2 imprisoned employees. I had to look them in the eye and tell them I was going to get them out, he said later. Then, one day, something nearly went very wrong. Across the visitation room, a familiar face, former US Attorney General Ramsey Clark. Their eyes met. If Clark said his name out loud, everything was over. Perot didn't run. He walked straight toward him. "Ramsey, what are you doing here?" The Iranian general standing nearby saw two Americans greeting each other like old friends and assumed exactly that. He gave Perot a personal tour of the prison. That tour handed Perot the intelligence he needed. The new plan centered on a young Iranian named Rashid, an EDS local employee, early 20s, loyal to his American employers. His assignment, at the right moment, bring the right crowd to the right place. By February 1979, the Iranian Revolution was at its peak. Khazar prison was a symbol of the Shah's brutality. Thousands of political prisoners held inside. On February 12th, Rashid slipped into a crowd of armed revolutionaries and passed along a message. Khazar still holds the Shah's men. The crowd surged toward the prison. The guards fired a few shots, then gave up. The gates came down. 11,000 prisoners poured into the streets. 2 of them were from Texas. Perot and Gaylord walked out with the crowd, covered 10 miles on foot, and reached the rally point, the Hyatt Hotel in central Tehran. From Tehran to the Turkish border, 500 miles, 2 Range Rovers, 7 team members, 2 fugitives, and Rashid, who insisted on coming the whole way. No passports. All of them wanted men. They were stopped and searched in nearly every town along the route. Revolutionary guards, militias, checkpoints, everywhere. Each time, Rashid stepped forward, spoke in Farsi, smiled, and handed over a document. The document carried an official-looking stamp. These people are friends of the revolution. Please treat them with courtesy and escort them safely to the border. Signed, Commander Tehran, Islamic Revolutionary Committee. But look closely at that stamp. It actually read, Riot, Religious School, founded 1344. A stamp borrowed from a school. In the chaos of the Iranian Revolution, it fooled everyone. Simons handed the paper to Perot when they reached Istanbul. He was smiling. From now on, he said, always read the fine print on the stamp. 2 days later, the Range Rovers reached the Turkish border. February 17th. All personnel arrived in Istanbul. Perot had been waiting in that hotel room for 46 days. They were home. The story was later turned into a best-selling book by British author Ken Follett, On Wings of Eagles, adapted into a television miniseries that drew 25 million American viewers. But the book added a firefight that never happened. The miniseries shows Perot rushing to the Turkish border to greet his men. In reality, he never left the hotel. Simons described the 500-mile drive from Tehran to Turkey in 3 words. A spring outing. 9 months later, Iran seized 52 American diplomats. The US government's rescue mission ended with helicopters crashing in the desert, and the operation aborted. And Perot's 7 veterans, 1 20-year-old Iranian, 1 borrowed school stamp, had already brought his people home. 46 days earlier. History is sometimes stranger than anything anyone planned.